up, sports fans? Your favorite sportsbook, BetUs.com, is back for our 28th year of NFL action. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. We've also got hundreds of new casino games, including the coolest new European slots, and our live dealers are waiting for you at the table. Sign up at BetUS.com today to get into the action. BetUS, where the game begins.
All right, moving on. Now, the NBA draft was yesterday. As you all know, 30 years ago, that Chris Webber was drafted with the number 1 overall pick by the Orlando Magic. But then later on that night, the Magic and the Golden State Warriors swapped picks. They traded away C-Webb to the Warriors for Penny Hardaway and a few more draft picks to build the tandem with he and Shaquille O'Neal that went on to have some success. They got to the NBA Finals in 1995, where they were ultimately swept by the Houston Rockets. And after that, Shaq left for LA and won 3 championships with Kobe and won another one with Dwayne Wade with the Miami Heat and the LA Lakers, respectively. So I always wondered, what if Shaq, Penny, and Chris Webber were all on the Magic during that time? Now, we all know that Shaq was a dominant big man, very dominant. I mean, come on, whether he was slender or whether he was bigger like he was during his Laker and Heat days, Shaq was very dominant. That dude could get to the rim with no problems at all. That dude punished people inside, always punishing people on the boards. I mean, come on. This was the first dude I had ever seen dunk so hard that he broke the whole backboard. But also Chris Webber, he was a great big man in his own right. He was a pretty good power forward who I think in some ways has been slept on. Yes, he could get inside, but he had a great jumper. And Penny, he was like the 90s version of Magic Johnson, real tall, great passer, great shooter, can get to the hole. But unfortunately, we all know injuries ended up derailing his career. To me, Penny should have been a Hall of Famer. And if it wasn't for those injuries, he definitely would have had a Hall of Fame career. Now, Shaq said in his documentary, in the 30 for 30 documentary, This Magic Moment, that he and Penny were Shaq and Kobe before Shaq and Kobe. Definitely were. But if these three would have been together, they would have been the big three long before we were saying big three. They would have been the OG big three. We talk about the big three with the Boston Celtics with Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Ray Allen, and then the Miami Heat with LeBron, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh. But these guys would have been the original big three. They would have. You would have had one of the great point guards of that time, and you would have had 2 of the great big men of that era. Now, back then, big men wasn't really shooting threes like that. So I see why Shaq would have had issues with C-Webb playing together. But I think they would have found a way to make it work because Shaq was more of an inside player. Chris Webber was more of an outside player. And Penny, Penny could score from anywhere, inside, outside. Of course, he would have kicked it inside to Shaq for a dunk. He would have kicked it out to C-Webb for a jumper. And then also, they later on added, not added, but guys like Dennis Scott was already there. So was Nick Anderson. Both of them were great shooters. And also, they later added Horace Grant. Imagine Horace Grant coming off the bench. Man, that would have been a great team. Like I said, they would have been the OG Big Three, and they would have been an OG super team. Now, a lot of people think super team just means you got to get all the free agents. No, I don't believe that. In my opinion, you can build a super team as well. Look at the Showtime Lakers in the 80s. Look at the Boston Celtics in the 80s. Those were super teams, despite the fact they were built. They still were super teams. I mean, come on. You got dog on there, a combination of almost 10 Hall of Famers right now from those 80s teams with Magic, Kareem, Worthy, Bob McAdoo, Jamal Wilkes, Bird, McHale, Parrish, Bill Walton, the late Dennis Johnson. Matter of fact, you do have 10 Hall of Famers combined from both of those teams. So yes, those were super teams. The 90s Bulls, that was a super team. You know, I mean, come on, they won 6 championships in an 8-year span. That's a doggone super team, and had 2 3-peats. That was a super team. You know, it doesn't matter if a super team was built through free agency or through the draft. It's still a super team. Just like, you know, if we both have 40 million, you may have inherited it, and I might have built it the hard way through hard work, you know, creating my wealth through investments and smart business moves. We still both have 40 million at the end of the day. It doesn't matter how you get there. If you got there, you're there. But the Magic definitely would have been a, the Magic definitely would have been a super team if they would have found a way to have Shaq, Penny, and Chris Webber coexist with each other on the same team. And they definitely would have been very dominant because, you know, a lot of people forget the Magic were next. It wasn't about who got next after the Bulls, you know, run was over. They were next. They were next in line. Matter of fact, the Magic beat the Bulls in the 95 playoffs on their way to the NBA Finals. And Horace Grant had that, you know, great game in Game 6 to close them out. So the Magic were next. They were supposed to be that next elite team in the East. But unfortunately, the issues between Shaq and Penny about whose team it was, and also Shaq leaving LA, deterred that. If the Magic would have had Chris Webber, Shaq, Penny, along with Dennis Scott, Nick Anderson, and Horace Grant, that team would have won at least 3 or 4 NBA championships during the late 90s and early 2000s. They definitely would have been a dynasty, and they would have been a super team, and we would be, and we would definitely still be talking about that team to this day. So, definitely want to know your thoughts on that. Do you think if the Magic would have had Penny, Shaq, and C-Webb, would they have been a dominant team in the 90s? Would they have won multiple championships? Let me know your thoughts.